This Monday.com ad was created by a team of people and AI agents. The agents wrote the copy and managed the timelines, while our human creative director made sure it all made sense. Easy. Create your own AI agent today on Monday.com.
Welcome back to No One Told Us, the podcast that tells the truth about parenting and talks about all the stuff that you wish you knew before having kids. I'm your host, Rachael Shepard-Ohta, and I'm so excited today to welcome Dr. Nikki Pensak. Dr. Nicole Pensak is a Harvard and Yale-trained clinical psychologist certified in postpartum mental health, and she is the author of the incredible book, Rattled, How to Calm New Mom Anxiety with the Power of the Postpartum Brain. Rattled was awarded Best Book for Parents by Zibby Owens, featured on Reese Witherspoon's Hello Sunshine and the Bright Side podcast, and named by Audible as Most Anticipated Reads 2025 in Wellbeing. Dr. Pensak also serves on the expert review board of Parents Magazine and owns her own private practice in New York, New Jersey, and 40 other states nationwide. So, Dr. Nikki, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come talk to us about postpartum anxiety.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
It's such a huge topic, and still somehow a lot of new moms are really, like you say, rattled and really surprised about what this postpartum anxiety and what all of these changes can actually feel like. You've said before that becoming a mother is a seismic identity shift, and not just emotionally, but neurologically. Can you explain a little bit what you mean by that and what's actually happening in our brains?
Yeah, I think when we become moms, every system in our body changes, right? And then we have these incredible brain changes as well that no one really talks about. And so the brain changes rapidly, fine-tuning and priming itself for new learning to make you a better caregiver to your baby, right? So, some parts get smaller, some parts get bigger, but basically you're getting rid of all the useless neural networks that you won't need for tending to your baby. That's called synaptic pruning. And basically it's why you probably can't remember what you did last week or yesterday when you're taking care of a baby, but you are not going to forget to order the diapers, right? Or the feeding schedule or whatnot, because your brain is primed to become the best caregiver that you can be and attune to your baby. And so what I want to empower mothers is to understand how to harness these changes to your advantage. And in the book, I talk about several ways to do that and what the specific research says in terms of those actual more specific brain changes.
So interesting. And, we're starting to learn more and hear more about this idea of neuroplasticity as it relates to infants and children and how their brains are like plastic, right? And they're so resilient. But then you also talk about this neuroplasticity in motherhood. So can you explain a little bit about what you mean by that and how our brain actually can rewire in response to the demands of now becoming a mom?
Yeah. So, our brain is constantly going through neuroplastic changes based on, just biology, but also environmental stimuli. So, but there are certain phases of life where your brain is primed to be more plastic, right? It's primed for changing. And becoming a mother, matrescence, is one of those phases. It's like adolescence for moms, right? And so when your brain is going through all these changes, right, it means that there's opportunities for a lot of growth and learning and building these new neural networks. And what I talk about is that, even something as seemingly simple as changing a diaper is building a whole neural network in your brain around changing a diaper. So let's say, there's so many cues that you have to pay attention to. So what brand are you going to use? How does it feel on the baby? Which one's good for blowouts? Which one's good for like nighttime? Which one's good for, swimming, right? And then, how tight do you have to fasten the diaper? You see little ridges on the baby. Maybe it's a little too tight. Maybe the baby's uncomfortable and, crying a little bit. And so your brain is sort of clocking that and building these prolific neural networks just around changing a diaper. And so multiply that by millions of other things that you have to do, tasks and whatnot, and tuning into baby's cues, that your brain is just constantly adapting to that and experience exponential neuronal growth. And so it's like neural network around how to soothe your baby, a neural network around, what to feed your baby and whatnot. So it just goes on and on and on. And so motherhood is a great opportunity to sort of learn, right? Because it's primed for that. It's primed to take in all of these experiences and make them really strong and solid in your brain to become a better caregiver. And so what I talk about in Rattled is like taking advantage of your brain being at this neuroplastic developmental phase and getting in there, not just taking care of your baby, but how to take care of yourself. Right. And
Yeah,
how to build neural networks around that when you're being pulled to take care of the baby and put yourself kind of second.
right. That's so interesting. And while you were talking, it was making me think of this idea of maternal instinct, because you're basically saying if you're learning on the job, right? Like you're not born knowing how to change a diaper or how to soothe the baby necessarily. Like those things are learned as you go. So what do you think about this idea of maternal instinct? Is it more of like a myth? Can anybody be maternal? What if you're not feeling that maternal instinct? Does it mean that there's something wrong?
It's a great question. I get this all the time. I actually write about this in the book extensively, but maternal instinct, we know, is a myth, and it's really about trial and error learning. And so anyone can can learn, right, through trial and error to be a primary caregiver. The book is not just geared towards moms, but it's geared towards primary caregivers. And so what you're talking about is experience-dependent neuroplasticity, where where you as a mom are rising to every relentless task 24/7 because you have to do this. There's no choice. So your brain is sort of forced to rise and learn and sharpen and refine itself. And so that's the maternal instinct. It's trial and error. So I hear moms all the time say, I don't think I'm meant to be a mom, right? This is so hard. I just don't have maternal instinct. What I tell them is that really no one does. And we really have to normalize that and validate that it's really about trial and error learning.
I love that. So anybody listening, if you're married to a man maybe and they say, oh, well, you do it, you're just better at it or something like that, you can tell them that that is not true and that they need to just try.
Well, that's actually a form of weaponized incompetence, right? The partner says, you do it so much better. You're born for this. You're made for this. When it's like, actually, you can say the science says that it's actually more trial and error. And so you actually need more practice. And so you get in there and
there you go.
You're forced to rise. You actually can become just as good as me, at this. You just need more practice.
I love that. You mentioned a little bit earlier too about this idea of, becoming really like forgetful. And we hear this all the time, this mom brain. I remember when I first went back to work after my first baby, I was kind of like teased for my mom brain because I just was not as sharp as at work as I was pre-baby. I'm just so curious what you say about mom brain. Is this another one of those myths, or is it really something that's happening that's making us just drop all these other balls because we're just so focused on our baby?
So there's a lot of research on this right now and more coming out about this. But mom brain, the way it's depicted and the stigma around being forgetful, feeling foggy, dropping the ball, that is mostly due to feeling overwhelmed, lack of sleep, right? And stress, just feeling overwhelmed for all these new tasks that you have to learn. And your brain is kind of making space for that. The interesting part is that, the mom brain really just doesn't tell the full picture when it's stigmatized. And when we actually look at the research and the studies going on, we see that mothers compared to non-mothers are actually performing, similarly in terms of memory and performance. And so I want to validate that moms, even though you feel like your mom brain is sort of not working as well, it's actually working really hard in other ways, and it needs time to adjust to all of these exponential tasks that you're rising to, the mental load that's new, right? And it's just overwhelmed. It needs time to adjust, settle down, and it's just making room for new tasks instead of, that's why you're going to feel foggy and forgetful because
Right.
you're not sleeping, right?
Yeah, it makes total sense. Like anybody would react that way if they were being tortured with sleep deprivation, right? Okay, we are going to talk a little bit more about this and about the mental health aspect too when we come back from a quick break. We'll be right back. All right, we are back with Dr. Nikki, and I really would love to kind of start talking a little bit about the mental health piece too, because obviously a lot of this stuff is like, it's a bi-directional relationship. Our mental health is tied to our sleep and vice versa, and how our baby's doing and vice versa. And you also talk in the book about post-traumatic growth, and you say that especially after difficult births or mental health struggles or identity loss, like a lot of the things that people after having a baby just kind of deal with and suffer through, that they can actually be a catalyst for post-traumatic growth. Can you explain what you mean by that?
So the premise of post-traumatic growth is that from trauma, you can actually experience increased resiliency and newfound purpose and meaning. And that was true for me when I went through my experience postpartum. And I've spent a lot of time working with post-traumatic growth in other populations, patients with burn injuries and patients, with cancer. And so it got me thinking how this applies to mothers. And there's one study that just came out and actually showed that there was post-traumatic growth in mothers. But I want everyone to feel like no matter how dark it got, no matter how bad it got, what you've been through, there's this opportunity that you can still become better than ever. And this is not to say that, we want these traumatic experiences. It's just the reality that, at least 13% of mothers experience traumatic births. And we have the, NICU experience, and every mother has a story. So I talk to mothers and it's like everyone has been through something really, really challenging, whether it's trauma or not. Not to mention that at baseline, even if you don't go through a traumatic incident, right? Motherhood has a way of bringing up old traumas, right? It
Mm-hmm.
everything to the forefront. And also, becoming a mother is its own normative trauma because everything changes so quickly, so rapidly, and you're just forced to adapt. So I talk about that in the book as well, that it's just like a normative trauma. And so
Right.
even if you haven't experienced a bad or terrible experience in regards to traditional traumatic incidents, you still have this opportunity for post-traumatic growth and resilience just from the transformation of becoming a mother.
That makes so much sense. And yeah, my question was going to be, how do you know if you've experienced a trauma? Because I think everybody can kind of experience things differently and process things differently and things like that. So how would you know if you had maybe a traumatic birth or just an experience during your birth or delivery that maybe you need some support with?
It's a great question. So, the specific criteria for some to diagnose trauma, like post-traumatic stress disorder or acute stress disorder, you would look for things like hypervigilance of the environment, nightmares, flashbacks, avoiding any cues that remind you or triggers that remind you of the event. This is just sort of brushstrokes on how we would officially diagnose it.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you are, a new mom, you have a lot going on and, you may be sort of white knuckling it, trying to get through it, trying to push those memories away. I think that, I set the bar very low. In my book, I talk about if you are not feeling as good as you want to or think you should feel, then I would get an assessment by an objective provider. It's that easy. We don't want to give mothers one more job to sort of diagnose themselves.
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard to when you are focused on taking care of a baby. And so I want to take that off their plates and sort of just talk to someone, talk to anyone about it, talk to your partner, talk to your doctor, talk to, a therapist, and they can give you objective feedback on what they think you're going through. And I think that's the best thing I can offer, like the best advice I can offer to every mother.
For sure. Yeah. I was just thinking about my first birth and I would never have described it as a traumatic birth, but afterwards I was having the flashbacks. I wouldn't look at pictures of the birth. I didn't want to see any of the videos I didn't want to have any reminders of the birth experience. Didn't want to ever have another baby. Told myself we were never having another baby. Never wanted to experience it again. And I was super, super anxious and I really struggled with anxiety with my first. And like you said, I kind of just white knuckled it. I never thought that there was anything that I really needed professional help. And looking back now, it's so ridiculous. I obviously so badly needed therapy. But for some reason in the moment, I just assumed it must be normal. I must just be having a hard time adjusting, or it was my baby's fault for being such a high needs baby. And once we figured him out, I'd feel better. And I think that is one of the biggest takeaways that people can gain from you and from your book is it's better to just get help early. Even if you don't think you really need it, if you didn't go through some huge traumatic event, it's okay. You might still really benefit from help, right?
When hunger strikes and I'm absolutely exhausted, or we're coming home from a trip or activities or camp or all the other fun things we want to do this summer, the last thing I want to do is stare at my empty fridge and try to figure out what we're going to cook for dinner. That's why I absolutely love Factor, because Factor has meals built around your goals, whether that's overall nutrition, more protein, or strength and workout recovery. And each meal is crafted with functional ingredients like lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole foods, and healthy fats. The best part is that they are fresh and never frozen, and there's over 100 rotating weekly meals, including globally inspired flavors like Mediterranean and Asian. So I absolutely never get bored. I always have something new and tasty to look forward to, and the quality is incredible. It tastes like you're eating a high-quality restaurant meal. You can also try the newly launched ready-to-eat salads, which I love for the summertime when it's too hot to eat warm food. And you can also add 70+ add-ons to round out your nutrition. So from green juices to peanut butter energy bites, and everything's ready so quickly in just 2 minutes. Factor does all the shopping, prepping, and cooking, delivering straight to your door so you have more time for everything else that you want to do this summer. So head to factormeals.com/no-one-told-us-50 off and use code no-one-told-us-50 off to get 50% off and free daily greens per box with new subscriptions only, while supplies last until 9/27/2026. See the website for more details. We recently remodeled our bathroom. It was our only bathroom for our big family of 5, and it was a complete disaster. It was so old, everything was broken. It really needed a total refresh. And the designer that I worked with recommended so many of our products sourced right from Wayfair. The tile that I shared that everybody went crazy for is incredible. It's so beautiful and unique, and it's from Wayfair. Just like a lot of our fixtures, our medicine cabinet, so many of the perfect pieces came together for our dream bathroom, and it was all thanks to Wayfair. Our designer knew that we wanted something beautiful and timeless with great taste, but we really didn't have a budget to be getting super high-end finishes. With using Wayfair, we didn't have to compromise what we wanted. We got the exact look we were going for. It looks so beautiful and chic, and we were able to stay within our budget. The delivery process was also completely seamless, so everything went according to plan, and we just couldn't be happier with the final result. Wayfair has over 20 million 5-star reviews, so you're not buying blind. You can see real customers, real photos and homes, and get real feedback before you add anything to your cart. If putting it all together by yourself sounds like a headache, they can handle not only the delivery, but also the installation and assembly. So you can just pick what you want, and Wayfair will deal with the rest. This makes it such a perfect and seamless process for busy families. So if you are ready to upgrade your home for way less, head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home and get your space ready for less. That's WAYFAIR.com.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
I mean, exactly. Like, you're going through so much, even if you didn't have a specific trauma or you feel like you don't have a reason to. I mean, just becoming a mother is reason enough. I mean, you're
Right.
just everything changing, hormonal shifts, biological shifts, relationship changes, right? New identity changes.
Mm-hmm.
Whole developmental phase is new, and we do a really poor job at preparing the mother for having a baby when we spend so much time focusing on the baby, and the baby has follow-ups, but the mother sort of gets lost in the shuffle. And
Yeah.
so yeah.
What are kind of the criteria that you would look for someone who has just, I don't want to say just, but like, the classic things that we think about with postpartum? I think people kind of are more aware of postpartum depression now, and postpartum anxiety, I think in the last few years has definitely gotten a lot more attention too. But what are the things that you would look for as far as symptoms for those?
And there's different ways that I look at it. In the field, we say that, like, if you are having symptoms for 2 weeks or longer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Baby blues only lasts a couple days. So if you're 2 weeks out, you're not having baby blues, right?
Mhm.
You're having potentially symptoms of postpartum depression or anxiety, right? So I want to just educate on that, because that's
Yeah.
really important, because I get so many mothers come to me, oh, it's just baby blues. It was like 3 months in. And I'm
Right.
Oh,
No.
no, that's postpartum. Even 3 weeks out, I would say, is postpartum. But I also deal with a lot of mothers that have high functioning anxiety and depression. And so they wouldn't clinically look like a depressed person, right? So when we think of typical clinical depression, you're sort of having trouble getting out of bed, right? Well, what mother is allowed or can
You
potentially,
can't.
you
Yeah.
can't get up to take care of the baby, right? So what mother isn't having trouble sleeping in the early months? I mean, so, but I'm saying that mothers are suffering more than they should, and especially that high functioning anxiety and depression, excuse me. You want to, once I scratch the surface, I can listen for, perfectionistic thinking or, being critical of yourself. I look for the mom guilt, the mom shame,
Mm-hmm.
the mom rage that happens, right?
Yeah.
So there's just so many things to look at. And that's why I say, if you're suffering at all, right, we want to just help you through this phase as best as we can. We want this to feel as good as possible, knowing that, like, yeah, it's really challenging, right?
Right.
Your sleep is going to be disrupted. But I think mothers are suffering more than they need to. And there's sort of this mother martyrdom culture out there where the more you suffer, the greater you sacrifice for your baby,
Right.
the
For
better the
sure.
mother, right? And so we want to get away from that and actually support mothers to root down and take care of themselves during this process, because that's actually the best thing for their baby.
Yes. So I'm curious too, though. So social media really was not as much of a thing when I first became a mom. It was just very different back then. And I don't know. Sometimes I think, yes, this is so great. Like, moms are talking, they're connecting, they're seeing other people go through the same things they are. And that is so wonderful that people are feeling less alone. But then on the flip side, I'm also seeing, and I wonder what your opinion is on this, I'm also seeing the normalization of a lot of things that maybe shouldn't be as normalized. So, people talking about anxiety symptoms or depression symptoms or mom rage type symptoms, and people are kind of talking about it like it's just a normal thing that everybody goes through. And I just wonder if you think that that's a positive or a negative, or if you think that it's actually preventing people from maybe getting help because they just brush it off as something normal.
I think that's always, an issue in terms of moms brushing things off because they think that it's normal. And now we just have, more moms, doing that.
Yeah.
And, I can't say that it's helpful or harmful. In a way, it's good that it's being talked about. If it helps you to feel less alone and that's what you need, great, right? There are lots of ways that mothers can get support. There are different, levels of support. So I don't want to say that it's harmful, because some moms, that will help them and that's what they need to get them through. And so I just don't want to make a blanket statement about that's harmful or helpful in any way. It's really up to you. And I think moms should look inside and sort of self-monitor and say, how am I feeling after this? Am I spending a lot of time looking at this content? Is my whole algorithm this? I mean, maybe there's something to this and I should get some assessment or talk to someone about this if it's consuming me. I will say, my daughter is 8 as well. And when I started writing Rattled, it was around that time. And it wasn't, sorry. Oh my God,
That's okay.
I need more coffee this morning.
Summer is here, and Kroger is your destination for hot savings. Find unique items at low prices with our exclusive brands. Fire up the grill with cookout classics like burgers, and don't forget delicious produce like fresh melons. Or treat yourself to summer's sweetest lineup with Kroger Brand's limited edition All-American Ice Cream Collection. Whatever your summer plans, Kroger makes it easy to enjoy high-quality food at affordable prices. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Sierra has all the best active and outdoor brands you need. From athletic stuff, like a full-court pickup game, swish, to athletic-ish stuff, like a half-mile stroll. Get those steps in. And for morning hikes up the mountain trail, good pace. To nighttime ghost stories from the camping chair. What a twist. Whatever level of active, Sierra loves it all. Head to Sierra or Sierra.com for the brands you want at the prices that let you do it all. From athletic to athletic-ish, Sierra's got it.
So what I would say is that my daughter's 8 also, but my son is 5. And when I started writing the book, there really wasn't much out there, like social media wise. And so I started my Instagram at Dr. Nikki Pensak to sort of only send resources to people. It was COVID. I was like, how do we give moms more support? If I'm suffering, I'm an expert in postpartum. I've had all this training and I sort of hit rock bottom. I was like, what's going on out there? So like I started, my social media to just really get people more support in the postpartum space. And then I wrote Rattled because I was like, it was interesting. I went from rock bottom to thriving in a relatively short period of time. And then as a researcher, I went back to see what was happening in the research and saw this new, maternal brain plasticity research that no one's talking about, and just the phase of matrescence. And I was like, well, everyone needs to understand this sort of in the same way that we understand adolescence, right? There's so much information. We understand teenagers and the teenage brain. We need to understand mothers and the mother brain and, matrescence.
Yes. That's so interesting. So I also have a 5-year-old and started my page during COVID. So it's really funny.
What?
And for the same reason, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not doing good. And, there's got to be other people out there that are like me. And yeah, it was quite a time to be a parent. And one of the reasons that I started was because I said at the beginning with my first, I had such anxiety, and my anxiety manifested with sleep. And I'm curious if you see this too, where I was just so obsessed with sleep. I was constantly tracking his sleep, constantly worried he wasn't getting enough sleep, just looking for answers about sleep constantly. It consumed me. And so I really wanted to start a page where I could teach people how to kind of relax about it. But I'm curious if you see that as one of the big drivers of anxiety for new moms too.
It's interesting because it's more, I think, at least for me, and I see moms concerned about their own sleep.
Their own,
right?
Yeah. Well, it's related, right? If your baby's not sleeping good, well, you're definitely not sleeping well. Yeah.
But I do see a lot of mothers, and especially perfectionistic mothers, high-functioning mothers that are, really rigid and strict about the scheduling sleep. And sometimes that's really helpful for them. And sometimes it becomes, a source of stress and anxiety. They're so consumed about it. So I think there's a balance there, and there's a way to talk about it. So again, I would say, without doing a formal assessment, right? To get an assessment to see, am I, overthinking about this? Am I making, this could fall in the realm of a little bit of OCD, but I'm not diagnosing you with postpartum OCD. I'm just saying I see it so much.
It can get there, right? There's such a huge range. Yeah. Yeah.
And it can attach to anything. So for, and I'm not saying you had it, but your anxiety was around sleep, right? And so, mothers can focus on anything. I know when I had it, postpartum OCD, I actually was really focused on my daughter getting sick, right?
Yes. I hear that a lot too.
Yeah. And that was, and then becoming a mom was a huge exposure in that sense because they all the time. And then COVID happened and I was like, wow, this is my worst nightmare coming true.
Yeah, really, the universe testing you.
Exactly. So, but that's what I say. It was tested, hit rock bottom. I mean, I was a mess and then got to the other side.
Wow.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about that transformation of getting to the other side? Because I know any mom listening right now that's going through this really tough postpartum phase, whether they have diagnosed anxiety or depression or not, it's just hard. And they're probably listening to you saying, yeah, and then I was thriving. And they're like, how? I want to get there too. So what are some easy, practical things people can do in the meantime,
right,
even if they're not seeking out formal treatment?
Well, I mean, that was a big part of me getting to thriving. I can't pretend.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I followed my own advice, even though I swear I thought I would never get postpartum. I had a therapist, ready. I had even a prescriber, a psychiatrist ready that I had established care with. I did an intake with her. I trusted her and I just had her ready to go. And I had never been on medication before. And I never honestly wanted to be on medication for myself, even though I'd seen it help so many people. But this is what I tell my patients to do. I wanted to have my safety net in place just in case. And thank God, because we were going through 2 weeks after my son was out of the NICU. So he was born, he was in the NICU for 5 weeks, 2 weeks following discharge, COVID happened. And we were on lockdown. My husband is a physician. He was on the front lines and we were on this text exchange with doctors overseas. And so it felt like we were getting inside information. I was terrified. COVID was coming, and also my nightmare coming true. I didn't sleep for 5 days. So it was at a point where I said, I know what this is. I need treatment and I need medication. I actually need more than just therapy. But I'm a clinical psychologist. Like I do this every day. So at least I had the insight to know. But I had my team in place. So I literally texted my psychiatrist, had a phone consult, that day, and was able to start the medication that night. I think within like 9 days, I was feeling better, which is pretty rapid.
Yeah.
I was sleeping, almost immediately, thankfully. And so the medication did its thing. And then I was back in therapy, working on it. I got awful. At the time, I had not started my social media until I was on the other side, till I was thriving. But I got off all social media. I was not watching the news. I was sort of in my bubble because that was really, I was trying to protect my brain.
Yeah.
I focused on exercise, getting outside for walks with the stroller and doing like relaxation exercise. I put a lot of these strategies in the book as well because they're brief and they're things that moms can do on the go. But it was just a lot of self-care and protecting my brain, doing the therapy, doing the treatment, doing like the exposures in a way that I could. Yeah.
That's really so great. And I think that's one huge piece of advice that people should really take away, especially if they're planning on having another baby or if they are currently pregnant. And we did that differently with our third as well. So I started seeing a therapist that was specialized in the perinatal period, because not every therapist has the same knowledge or the same background, right? And not everybody can specialize in postpartum necessarily. So I intentionally seeked that out during my pregnancy. Like you said, started an intake with her, had a few sessions with her, built a rapport, knew that I liked her and I trusted her. And then that way I knew, okay, once I'm postpartum, if anything goes wrong or goes down, I'll at least have somebody to call and see me right away. Because the last thing you want to have to think about when you're freshly postpartum and anxious or depressed or whatever it is, or just, overwhelmed, you don't want to have to think about vetting a therapist, finding a therapist. It's so overwhelming.
That's why I say, once you pee on that stick,
find somebody.
A postpartum team.
Yeah.
And right, you want to have a provider that understands, matrescence and just the developmental phase of motherhood and treating postpartum specifically, because so many well-intentioned providers end up dismissing patients all the time and saying, oh, it's just a part of motherhood. And I think it, adds to the stigma, the shame of getting treatment. And also these are well-intentioned providers. Like they're just help, but you need someone that really understands this because they'll know how to assess you correctly, because it does look different than sort of clinical depression, right?
Right. Yeah. So get your care team, just like you would find a lactation consultant that you could just text from the hospital, baby's not latching, please come see us. You need to have a whole team of people just ready to go so that you don't have to think about one extra thing. We're going to take one more quick break. And when we come back, I do want to talk a little bit more about the book and kind of your inspiration and your writing process and your personal experiences. We'll be right back. We are back with Dr. Nikki Pensak, and she is the author of Rattled. I'd love to hear about, you've kind of talked about your inspiration behind writing the book, but what was really kind of the driving force behind you actually taking on such a huge project and writing this book?
Honestly, the book came pouring out of me. I'm not kidding. I knew basically my whole life, I've always loved reading. I've always loved writing. I knew I always wanted to write a book. However, what was more important is that I had a story to write. Now, did I ever think that it would be postpartum and adjusting to motherhood? No, but sort of when this happened, I felt like I had to write it. I couldn't not write it. And so I was just literally writing all the time, while I was drying my hair or taking voice notes on a walk, right? Because I was taking care of kids also, but I just had to get it out of me. And then it became more of a formal process after I got all the content out.
I love that. They say that that's how you should write a book, right? Is if you feel like you just cannot not write it.
Yeah.
So how did your own experiences with having children or being in the postpartum period, how did those stories kind of shape what you wanted to write and what you wanted to convey in the book?
I just felt like it was such an incredible and challenging period of my life that was profound and so meaningful. However, there were things and, going from rock bottom, being in crisis, I was just like sort of shocked at the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized it's happening. The more I talked about it, right, the more I heard other people's stories. And I also felt like as a researcher, right, my academic background was developing and disseminating interventions to help caregivers with patients with cancer. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm a caregiver.
Right.
Mothers are the ultimate caregiver. And yet we have very limited resources for mothers. And I was like, I also wanted to bring in the science, like the latest cutting edge science, because there's a story there that's not being told, but that everyone needs to hear. And I think if everyone understood what actually happens when you become a mother and the brain changes, as well as everything else, and we sort of set mothers up for success in this way and support them, nurture them through the process, then we have an incredible resource here, not only for our children, for ourselves, for society, for work, employment. I mean, there's such potential for profound development. It's like a breeding ground of neuroplasticity. And I have always been fascinated by brain changes and supporting those processes, being, a clinical psychologist and doing work with, patients with dementia, with mild cognitive impairment. I was always like focused on the neurology about it. And so I just felt like, wow, this is a missing piece that people really need to understand. And not just moms, like society.
Right. Yes, please. I know we need to catch up because it is the way that we treat moms in this country is really horrific. And yeah, I'm so glad that books like this are getting published and hopefully we can start to shift things. My last question is more personal, and maybe it has something to do with what we've been talking about, but maybe not. And it's something that I try to remember to ask every guest, which is, what is something no one told you about becoming a parent that you wish you'd known?
So much. I mean, it's all in the book, but I honestly didn't realize the potential for profound growth and how much it would be such a transformation and a positive one, right? As well as incredibly challenging and relentless. Yeah, it's like the ultimate transformation, I think. And for me, there weren't a lot of conversations around that. Like, what do I want to be like as a mother? How will I be tested as a mother? How do I work through my own, development, right?
Yeah.
Because it sort of brings everything to the forefront, like how I was raised, how, I was parented, how I want to do things, maybe break cycles or do things differently, or what it would bring up for me, like triggers, with my baby and all of that. So it just was incredibly cerebral and thought-provoking and inspiring in so many ways. And I just really didn't, I didn't expect it. You kind of get pregnant and you're like, oh, you're going to become, but so like lots of people become moms. Like, it's sort of like, what's the big deal?
Right. It's so true. Well, and I love that you focus on that growth, because I think so many people struggle so much with their life changing and the loss of identity, and things are all so different now. All my relationships are different and I don't have any autonomy anymore. Like, there are so many things that are different, but I love that you reframe it like this can actually be also a time of profound growth. And I think that's a really helpful reframe for people.
Yeah. And in the book, right, like the tone is empowering and supportive. However, I do speak very candidly about the very real challenges that happen, with your marriage and partnerships, right? And with mom rage and mom shame and mom guilt. So it's not like, all meant to be, I'm not like sugarcoating it.
No, it's not sunshine and rainbows, but it is, like you said, it's empowering. It's like acknowledging this is really hard and you're also strong enough to do it.
Yeah. And how do we use the latest science to support you through this, right? So we're in an age of information overload and social media. And I just want to give mothers the highest quality information and guidance that I can based on the actual science. And I think that's where, you were asking me earlier about, the social media aspect of it. And I think that why I wrote the book and why I didn't publish, in an academic journal about this, because that's typically how I publish, is because I really wanted to get this information out there in, where there's so much noise. I wanted to be signal. So
Yeah. Well, I think you achieved that. It's a fabulous book. Can you let us know where we can find it and where we can connect with you?
Sure. So definitely follow me at Dr. Nikki Pensak. I'm posting, lots of tips for moms and, updates on the book and my tour, which is still going on, and different events, as well as, So that's the best place to follow me. And then,
Perfect.
pick up the book. It's available on Audible as well. I know that I listen to a lot of my books.
Yeah. I mean, moms have to just listen to everything, right?
Yeah. Or you can get it at a bookstore. It's really available wherever books are sold, Amazon, whatnot.
I will link all of that in the show notes for people too, just to make it super easy. I want to just thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I think this will be a really helpful conversation for so many people, and I really just appreciate you.
Thank you. And also, if you do read the book, let me know what you think. And reviews are very much appreciated. So helpful for authors. I don't think people know that. So please leave a review, an honest review wherever you purchase the book.
Yes, such a good reminder. It is really important. All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Nikki. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for having me.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.